Tony in front. Crosses over, gets a shot, goal! What a great goal by Tony Field! Now here's Stevie Hunt beating two men. He's in. A shot, goal! Steve Hunt, a brilliant goal. The Cosmos lead 4-1.
Come on, make your getaway to the non-stop fun of soccer. Get away to the Cosmos.
Interception by the Cosmos. Toppage on the right side. Crosses in front. Canaglia! Go! Canaglia, go!
Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Carvelis, the voice of the Cosmos. The Cosmos entered the 1977 season with high hopes, a new home, and some new faces to bolster an already impressive aggregation. The incomparable Pelé was primed for his last year. The league's leading scorer, Giorgio Canaglia, was starting his first full season with the Cosmos. Defenders Nelson Moraes, Bobby Smith, Mike Dillon, Captain Keith Eddy, Werner Roth, and Charlie Aitken were back in the fold. Midfielders Ramon Mifflin and Terry Garbett would return, along with Tony Field and goalkeeper Shep Messing. The Cosmos had gone to the NASL quarterfinals in '76 before being ousted by Tampa Bay. They knew they had to have more trump cards if they were to deal for a title in 1977. They made the moves. Jadranko Topic and Vito Dimitrijevic were summoned from Yugoslavia. Jomo Sono, an exciting forward from South Africa, came aboard after a glowing recommendation from Pelé. Turkish goalkeeper Erol Yassin was in the fold. And from the English League, an exciting winger, Stevie Hunt, would make the long trip across the Atlantic. The Cosmos also added a promising group of young American players that included Gary Etherington, Paul Hunter, Marcello Curry, Greg Cortez, Tommy Lang, Bobby Rohrbach, Chris Aguiliotti, Scott Strasburg, and Roberto de Oliveira. The Cosmos were ready for the long, tough journey to Soccer Bowl 77. There would be pressure. They were the glamour team of the NASL with the likes of Pelé and Canaglia. Every team would be up for them. But the Cosmos would handle that pressure well. And when it was over, they would write a glorious chapter in the history of American sports. They would become the biggest sports story of 1977. A story worth preserving.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
And what a season it wound up becoming, that 1977 New York Cosmos North American Soccer League Championship, as narrated by the late great Jim Carvelis. That, by the way, hi, my name's Tim Hanlon, that is, and this is Good Seats Still Available, your curious little podcast journey each and every week into what used to be in professional sports, or what we like to sort of focus on here as sort of teams and leagues and those kinds of things that don't exist anymore, defunct or otherwise, previously incarnated, whatever. That's what we like to revel in here on this little show. And that little clip comes from a really hard to find album. But if you were walking the hallways there of Giant Stadium back in the day, 1978 in particular, that season, you will have seen this album. It was called This Is Cosmos Soccer. And it's an entire LP, two-sided, that literally goes through play-by-play and game-by-game through all the fits and starts of what became ultimately a classic and memorable championship season, Pelé's last game and last shot at a championship with the New York Cosmos. The album came out, I think, in 1978 and was a fixture there in the souvenir stands. And yes, we pulled that one out of the old library there, and pops and hisses and crackles and all. And it's fitting as we get ready to celebrate Christmas time. We're dropping this episode on Christmas Eve, so happy Christmas or Merry New Year or whatever that is, whatever you celebrate out there. We hope your holidays have been or are great. And we're obviously going to take a week off, and this episode will have to satiate you for the next 2 weeks, but I think it will. Because one of the members of that great 1977 Cosmos team, and the year before, as well as the second, or actually third, really, but next championship season that the Cosmos had in '78, is our very special guest this holiday week. His name is Bobby Smith, and he was, you could say, a stalwart defender for the Cosmos during those amazing years where they sort of went from, sort of this very interesting, assemblage of journeyman players circa 75 until this guy named Pele came about. And around 76, when Bobby Smith and his South Jersey / Philadelphia metropolitan area pal, Bob Rigby, came onto the team, you start to sort of see the beginnings of the rebuilding, or the building of what ultimately became that championship seasons in 77 and 78. And Bobby Smith is, this is a tremendous conversation. Bobby's a longtime American-born and bred soccer player, runs a very successful soccer program and indoor facility down in South Jersey. We'll give you some more information about that in a few minutes. And as you'll hear in this conversation, Bobby and his pal Bob Rigby were, by all accounts, the reasons that I became a New York Cosmos fan, and perhaps arguably the rationale behind this little show that you're listening to. So it's all Bobby's fault, as we'll hear in our chat. Bob is also, one of the growing number of National Soccer Hall of Fame members that we've interviewed on this show in our short little lifetimes. I think actually the seventh, if you're counting players and administrators and builders and that kind of stuff, and actually the 10th, if you include, as we do, frankly, the Colin Joe's Media Award winners, who are also members in full standing of the National Soccer Hall of Fame. So we've got a nice little trove there, I guess, of interviews with people, who are important to the game of soccer in this country. And Bobby Smith is happily one of them. And we were ecstatic to be able to connect and have a very, very fun conversation, which you will hear in a few minutes as we go through things like the Philadelphia Atoms, and not only the Cosmos, but the Atoms of 73 to 75, the San Diego Sockers. We get into Philadelphia Fury stuff. We touch on the Philadelphia Fever of the MISL, where Bobby had a couple of cups of coffee, as well as Le Manique de Montreal, which was his sort of final outdoor pro landing spot. And also, by the way, some very interesting conversations about being on the national team in the late 70s and through all the way to 1980. So this is a really cool conversation coming up with our new pal, Bobby Smith, he of the National Soccer Hall of Fame. And in my mind, the reason why I became a Cosmos fan, and again, we blame him, but in a loving and gentle way, of course. We're not going to give you any promos this week. We suspect that you're already fully embracing all of the great gifts and joy that hopefully you're celebrating with your families and your friends this holiday season. But we do want to at least say thank you for all the great support during the course of this year, 2018. My God, it's going to be 2019, I think, by the time that some of you hear this episode. We got some great stuff coming at you for next year, but I do want to say thank you to our friends oldschoolshirts.com, our friends sportshistorycollectibles.com, and also our friends in Portland at 503 Sports, 503-sports.com. We want to thank, of course, our friends at Podfly Productions, and in particular, the great and good Dr. Jerry Payne at Podfly, productionspodfly.net. All great folks, and we appreciate you giving them a try and patronizing their wares. And we also thank you all, of course, out there in listener land. You're in the tens of thousands now. It's fascinating and really hard to believe, but we could not do this show without your support, your interest, and your fervor for this little nook and cranny of soccer sports. Sorry, that's soccer, please. Sports history, professional sports history. That that is just completely continues to amaze at all the various things that we learn and will continue to learn as we go into the new year. So, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, which was a couple of weeks ago, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. Just I hope it's all great. And we wish you the best for the new year. If you're listening to this in the new year of 2019, buckle up because we've got a lot of great stuff coming your way. And as soon as I shake this cold, we're going to get right into it. So again, our thanks. And we really love doing the show. And we appreciate you letting us know that you enjoy it too. So it means a lot to us. So thank you. And God bless, as they say. All right. So let's not waste any more time. Let us fill our glasses full with another couple of ounces of eggnog. Let's get a couple of Christmas cookies on the side. Let's kick up our feet and relax and enjoy our very fun and engaging conversation with the great National Soccer Hall of Famer Bobby Smith coming up right now.
45 years later, somebody wants to talk to you about something in your life. It's like, what the hell do they want? What's going on? It's nice that somebody's still interested in those days and all that stuff, So
well,
I'm all right with that,
So I appreciate it. I mean, I've been doing this little podcast for a year and a half as a way to sort of keep me sane from my day job in the media business, which is going kablooey. But my initial interest in pursuing conversations around teams and leagues no longer with us actually emanated from my fandom as a Cosmos fan. And maybe we should start with this, okay? And this is a personal aside. You and your pal at the time, Bob Rigby, were, I think, indirectly responsible for me becoming a Cosmos fan back in, dare I say it, 1976. So we're talking Ho-Ho-Kus, New Jersey. Ho-Ho-Kus, New Jersey. You probably don't remember it, but this is the end of.
I remember that town.
Okay. So we're talking at the end of my rec soccer team, Ho-Ho-Kus and Saddle River, New Jersey, sort of combined teams. We had a decent year that year, and you guys, unbeknownst to probably to you at the beginning of your day, were kind enough to come and sign some autographs and hand out the trophies.
Oh wow! At Ho-Ho-Kus in that town.
Correct.
Huh? Me and Riggs.
Yeah, and I guess this is
funny.
So this is probably about the time when you guys had kind of maybe just joined the team. But so it's all your fault. So let's put it that way. Let's start there.
Oh, really? That's good. Yeah, we made an impression on you, huh?
You did, and so let's rewind a little bit, right? So give us a little bit of a sense of how you got into soccer in the first place in your collegiate career, because let's be honest, in the late '60s, early '70s, right? Soccer, was not quite the thing in the United States, really. So how did you get involved and hooked on it in the first place?
Well, you're right. There was very little soccer being played any place. I don't know. I mean, you still had like your inner cities that were doing, all the ethnic guys had that. And that's how we got into soccer in my area was Trenton. And we played, all our leagues were in Trenton. And you had the Trenton Italians, the Trenton Ukrainians, the Trenton Germans, every ethnic with the Scotch Club. And those were all the clubs. And we had a blast with them because we were just American guys, and we'd go into these clubs, and it'd be all Germans. And I played with them for a while. And they spoke German all the time. The sidelines, they're all cheering for these young American players. And probably half, at least, of them were the German children, that played for there. But they brought started to incorporate the Americans into these club teams. From the inner city, not inner city, but, from the ethnic areas of the country. And, Trenton was a very ethnic immigrant city back then with all its little communities. So it was a perfect kind of, situation for us to go into the programs that they loved. We had none created by our own suburban American people, you know what I mean? So that was the opportunities were with those groups, and then it became more Americanized. You started having your leagues in your suburban areas and stuff. But I mean, there was an Irish guy on my neighborhood that was playing soccer when I was like, I don't know, 9 or 10. We started playing. And now I see 9 and 10-year-olds that are just like unbelievable in my business. We have I have a lot of travel league programs, a lot of training programs. There's 9-year-olds now that are just so good. It's unbelievable. And we just started playing it now. We didn't know anything. So the game has changed so much, really.
So why soccer, say, versus all the other sort of, shall we say, quintessentially American sports, right, as a kid?
Well, I played all of them all the way through high school. I played baseball, basketball, and soccer. One season led to another. And I can remember I can remember one time I was at American Legion practice as maybe a sophomore or a junior, let's say, in high school, and I was on the baseball field, and a bunch of soccer guys, older soccer guys, were playing soccer, and I remember leaving the field, and I remember Mr. Armeni was one of our coaches, and saying to them, I'm going to go over there and play soccer. And I left baseball then just because, I don't know, I probably wasn't that good at it or what, whatever. I just wanted to play that game. You know, my buddies were over there, and I just decided then that I wanted to play soccer only. But that's that. I mean, you didn't play soccer only growing up where I was growing up at. You know, there was no such thing as only playing soccer only. It wasn't offered in the spring or the summer. Nobody was playing, you know, so it was a fall sport. And I played probably more basketball than any of them, you know, really. And, you know, after school, you just go down to the courts and you just play basketball all the time. And then, unfortunately, I wish I was developing my soccer skills at that age. I would have been a better player. But that was just, you know, that was just such different times. It's unbelievable, you know.
Well, you didn't do too badly, right? I mean, you went on to play a stellar college career, right, at Rider. So, I mean, you obviously made a decision to kind of formalize the soccer thing over everything else, no?
Yeah, I wanted to play soccer more than anything. I really liked it. Made a group of guys from Trenton, all became great friends. And it was a very small community, actually, funny enough. It was, you know, it wasn't that many guys in your group that would play soccer, and we just played all the time. And I mean, I can remember wanting to go to Europe, and like we didn't even know about the leagues. We didn't know about anything. There was no media, no newspapers. There was nothing around. I remember there was like what was it called from England? It was a soccer magazine, and or German magazine maybe. And somebody'd get a hold of it, and it'd be like you'd pass it around. It was, oh man, Gunther Netzer, who's that? You're reading about Pelé. You read about these people, and you had nothing, no TV, no exposure to the game at all, which really hurt the development of the game. That, you know, there wasn't any way to see how the game should be played. We're down at the high school field or something playing the game that we think they think we know what we're doing, you know. So it was tough. It was so different then. And then I met Manfred Schauscheid, though. That was the turning point.
Well, let's talk about Manny, because that's that and the college thing. I maybe you could sort of wrap all that up into, okay, so at what point do you realize that you have some level of talent beyond perhaps the collegiate sort of experience, and maybe when and how does this I would dare say still fledgling North American Soccer League thing hit your radar for the first time? Because, you know, I would argue it would only be the sort of most, you know, passionate devotees who even knew about the NASL at that time. Right.
Yeah. You're not going to believe how that came about. I'll tell you that. But I mean, high school, I'm playing in, you know, pretty all-state player and pretty good player. High school, scoring a lot of goals. You know, me and a good friend of mine, my best friend growing up, and we both had opportunities to go to Rider College. I had no other colleges interested in me. My brother went to Glassboro, a college in New Jersey, and it cost my parents like, I don't know, $7,000-8,000 a year for them to go there. And it was looking a little bit difficult of how I was going to end up in a college someplace, financially, let's say. So the Rider came along and offered me and my buddy Mike Strickland, both of us, scholarships to that college here. And I never knew Rider soccer, never watched any other college team play, never heard anything about them, you know. But, okay, so I go there. And that summer before I go, Mike says to me, and we trained all the time together. He goes, I don't think I'm going to Rider. I said, what do you mean, Mike? We're going together. And he's like, I just joined the Marines. I'm going to Vietnam. And I was like, are you serious? And I was mad at him for, like, you know, bailing on me. And I'm on a soccer tour that fall, and he's in his rice paddies, Vietnam. So it was like, it was just such a different kind of paths that we went on. And that's how I started playing. I went to Rider by myself, which is, okay, big deal, but I really wanted to go with him because we played really well together. And I was very disappointed when he just looked at me and said, I joined the Marines yesterday. I was like, wow. And, you know, I mean, well, whatever. So I ended up going to Rider, and it wasn't a soccer school. The guys played maybe a couple months a year. None of them played year-round. I really think I was the only full-time soccer player that, in my mind, played that much. And the teams we weren't good. So I led this team in scoring when I was a freshman. And I could only play, like, non-conference games. I played in 9 games. I scored, like, I don't know, I don't remember exactly 10, 11 goals or so my freshman year. But that's not how good a player I was. That's how bad the team was. It says more for that than it says about my playing ability, actually. But, I always played forward, attacking midfielder, and I was like, loved the game, was always fit and covered the whole ground in the field. And it was, I kind of, fought hard on the soccer field. I took it seriously, and I really wanted to do well every game, and I had a good work ethic, and that kind of stuff pays off for you,
Well, okay, so then how do you get on the radar of this NASL thing? Did you even know there's a thing called a draft, and were you aware of a league? And
no.
Was it even in the back of your mind at all that you could even go to another level, knowing that maybe there actually isn't another level in this country?
Yeah, no, had no idea what the NSL was. I guess there was a team, New York Generals, I think, had a team, and I don't know what the Cosmos. The Cosmos.
New York Generals were they were one of the two forerunners, along with the Skyliners.
Okay, and then one night, my senior year, I don't know what I'm going to do after. I'm going into my student teaching. I'm a little behind in my credits, but I'm going to be a teacher, I guess. I was in a teaching program at Rider. Because I didn't do well in the business side of it. It was classes I'd taken corporate finance and all these hard accounting classes. I didn't do great in them. So I went over, changed my degree. But so I'm playing there my senior year, and I'm bartending at this bar Extension, one of the famous bars in New Jersey. It's Trenton. It was a Trenton soccer hangout. And the guy gave me a bartending job there. And the phone rang, and one of my buddies on my dormitory room was at the phone booth at the end of the hall, called me and said, "Hey, just got a call from somebody, and you got drafted and something." And I swear to you, I thought that I said, well, my lottery number was 209 in the draft, in the Vietnam draft. I swear I thought that's what he said. What he meant to me is that it was a draft into the service, because I didn't know anything about a draft, And then I got a phone call from George O'Gorman, a sports writer in Trenton, and he said that I had been drafted by the soccer team. And it was a brand new team in Philly, so there was nothing to know about the team. It was our first year, so I didn't know there wasn't a team in Philly. So I really had no idea what the NASL was about. And there was like 9 teams in the league. And this guy drafts me, Al Miller, who was the only American coach, I think probably the first American coach in the NASL. He drafted me because we used to go, this extension team from Trenton used to go to Hartwick College, because some of the guys younger than me started going up to Hartwick and playing. Mooch and Angelotti, the Moore brothers, great Trenton players. A little younger than me, Hartwick became a place to go. And I just missed out on that by a couple years, And we'd go up there and play indoor winter tournaments. And that's the only time the coach of Hartwick ever got to see me play, was on playing with Extension. We'd go up there. It was funny because we would beat Hartwick at their own tournament, because we went up there with a pretty loaded Extension team and played against a college team. I was in college as well, but played against their college team indoors, and we did really well with them. And he remembered me from those tournaments, and he drafts me the following spring when he gets the job coaching a new team in Philly. He drafted Rigby first, who was the best goalkeeper in America, in the country. In my mind, ever, actually. But anyway, he drafted him first out of East Stroudsburg, because Al Miller played East Stroudsburg in their season, Hartwick, right? So that's a connection with Rigby. And he drafted me out of Rider and his next pick, and that's how we ended up in Philly.
So we had Al Miller on a couple of months ago, and I didn't get into
did you? Oh,
yeah,
boy.
some of the draft picks there, but so this completely blindsided you? Did you have any inkling that like he would be, considering, or you had no idea that any kind of drafting was either possible or that you were going to be tempted?
No, and I didn't know Al Miller. I didn't know who he was. The coach of Hartwick, I believe, went there to play. I don't know who the coach is of the team that you're playing in an indoor tournament, and I never knew who the guy was, But he drafted, and he told me afterwards, he goes, "Hey, Smitty, you were a diamond in the rough." I'm like, what are you talking about? But that's what he said to me after he had drafted me. He goes, yeah. Who was going to draft me from Rider? And, back then, like, local people did the draft. All the coaches from the NASL who were back in Europe coaching, they weren't doing the draft. They didn't care what Americans got picked. I think the draft was like, I don't know how serious it ever was really taken, because they'd have some local coach, junior college coach, whatever, do the drafts for these coaches. It was never I mean, how many years did they have the draft before mine? I don't even know. Was it it might have only been the second or third year there was even a draft, the one I was in. So nobody knew about that.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And I think it's also especially doubly interesting because the Adams were, I wouldn't say hastily arranged, but it was a relatively short period of time between the team
that was
being awarded together and them having to get a team on the field.
That's right. And, they drafted me, and I got a call. I don't know. It must have called me, I'm sure. Like a day or two later, said, we're going to England on Friday. And this was like a Tuesday after that weekend with the draft. I'm like, okay, all right. So I'll send you some information. We'll be at Kennedy Airport or whatever. So I have to go into school now because I just started my student teaching, my senior year student teaching, right? And I go in there and I talk to this dean that was the head of the business education department that set me up for student teaching over in the Chamonix High School over in Pennsy. I was doing it. I'm in the middle of it. I say to him, Mr. Brower, I have to leave because, and this guy, I remember this guy looking at me like, what is wrong with you? Because and they put a lot of time into it. I'd say this guy did prepare me for that and my major, and he was my advisor and all that crap, and he just looked at me like, you can't be serious. You're throwing away a degree here. And, I said, I remember looking and saying, well, whatever business ed means to you is what soccer means to me. I'm sorry, but it's an opportunity for me of a lifetime, and I'm going. And it's funny because I came back to him a year or two later to finish my degree. And I asked him if I could do my student teaching. And he said, no, we're not offering it to you at this time at all. So I wanted to finish my degree at some point, but I went back to him. It was like he was waiting for me with like double barrel shotguns, like, all right, you come back. He probably meant you'll come back to me someday. When you do, look out, So
yeah, but it's also a bit, it's quite brave, right? I mean, and that's was my next question is like, what was the calculus in your mind about making a decision to become a quote unquote professional soccer player, right? When not a lot of track record there, right?
Well, that was no decision. I was in school to play soccer, and I'm taking classes, and I'm trying to hang on to a 2.0 so I can play. I was not a student. I was not concerned about teaching. I wanted to be a soccer player. That was it. So it was no decision. When I had an opportunity to play soccer, I was just so far gone. It wasn't even. I remember being happier than it can be. I don't remember any feeling of. I was elated, you know what I mean? It was like a dream come true for me. There's a team in Philly, a new team is in the professional NASL, and they play. And now here's an issue. Like they gave me a job during the day on a construction site. It was an apartment complex. Me and Riggs both worked during the day with the Adams. They gave us $100 a week for the day job, and you'd leave about 4:00 from the job and go to Vet Stadium, and practice was across the street. The old is it RFK, JFK, whatever stadium that was across from the Vet.
Yeah.
Right, and we trained there every night 6:00. Hard training with Al Miller, and that was our life then. I remember standing on Stan Startzel's couch. He lived in Philly. He was on the team a year before me. He had an apartment in Philly. I stayed on his couch that summer season, and I did that for 3 years right in Philly, and then I get traded to the Cosmos. Do you mind if I jump ahead to that for a second?
Yeah, sure, because I do want to go back to Adams because, the championship thing, which is kind of important. But sure, of course, let's hear it.
Okay.
Go do it. We go all over the place here. No problem.
All right, just this point, though, that I want to mention. We get traded to the Cosmos. And I can remember me and Riggs getting on a train going up to New York together because we get traded together, and Pelé was there, which was like unbelievable. But they told us that they would be training in the mornings, 10:30 at Hofstra, and then playing games at Yankee Stadium. And I was like, we're training in the morning? And they were like, yeah. I said, I looked at Reese like, we're not going to have to work. You know what I mean? It was like, that's when I felt, that was the biggest moment actually, is when I felt and knew that we were training every day in the morning, 10 o'clock. And that's what we did for a living. I think it was my contract was $18,000 that first year in New York, but that's coming from making $800 a month in Philly my third year. So I can remember thinking, now I feel like it's a full time. Now I feel like a professional athlete because I'm not working any job during the day. We're just playing soccer, and then going, and that was like unbelievable moment for me, really, to realize that now this is our lives now. And it was like unbelievable how that was thrilling. But we go back to the Adams. I just wanted to mention that to you because that was when I really felt like I became a full-time player, you know?
No, that's a really telling point. And we've heard a little bit of this from some of our other soccer conversations. In particular, Bobby Moffett, right, would was something very interesting, even years before you, right? The idea of, what is this quote unquote professional soccer thing when, a lot of it was in the off season and also during the season. Working odd jobs. I mean, he was talking about how Lamar Hunt and the organization, would line him up with, groundskeeping jobs at the local, private high school, right, during the day. And
that's funny. McCluskey, the owner of the Adams, was a construction guy, so he was a big Philly construction guy that really wanted to own an NFL team. From what I can remember about his reading things about him, he wanted an NFL franchise, couldn't get one. So I don't know. There's a story out there where Lamar Hunt, talked him into getting a soccer franchise. But he had a big construction company, so there was always work. We always did something to do with his business, the owner's business,
Well, let's talk about that first season in particular with the Adams, and maybe a little bit of a sort of, you give us a little bit of a hint of the day-to-day, but, it turned out to be kind of a magical season. And did you even imagine that it could even wind up with a championship when you were beginning your journey with the Adams?
I couldn't really have imagined that the team would go that far, but I remembered thinking as it went along, we go over to England, right? Remember I told you about that preseason, we go over to England. And it's also another part of that was before we went to England on let's say a Monday, a Sunday I had the game with Manny Schulscheid's German Elizabeth German's team that Manny Schulscheid coached, and I played for him in college. So we'd make a few bucks on the side, kind of. The day before we left, I played at Farters Grove, horrible field, and I did my ankle. And I was like, I hurt it pretty bad, and I remember being in a lot of pain. And the next day, I've got to get on a plane to go with the Adams. And I just remember saying to Riggs, man, come on, give me a hand here, man. I got to walk. It's like if they see me limping, they're going to leave me home. So I remember once that plane took off, I looked at them and I was like so pumped. Like, they're not leaving me home now. I'm going with them. But I couldn't train there. I did nothing the first, I don't know. We were there for 2 weeks and I could do nothing. My ankle was in that bad a shape, but I couldn't put any weight. I didn't do much at all over there, which was terrible. But they picked up some players over there, and I started meeting these English guys and just fell in love with these guys. I mean, they come from a soccer culture, and it was Jim Fry, Andy Pove, and Roy Evans from Liverpool. I never knew any of their names, obviously, because we don't know anything about English soccer at the time. And George O'Neill from Scotland, and he's starting to put Chris Dunleavy from Southport. He's getting his team together, and I'm like, these are older professionals, soccer players from England. They played Division III, okay? And that's how that league kind of started with those level players. But those guys loved us. They came over here hard players, good work ethics with families, wives, and kids. They come over, and me and Riggs are around them, and the other American guys were around those guys, and they were great role models for us. I love those guys. It was tremendous. And all the anti-American stuff that I ended up feeling towards the league in years after, none of that had anything to do with loving your teammates and being. It was more of a policy issue with the league. Why aren't we having more Americans on the field than it was ever against the foreign players that were here? Because I had great relationships all my playing career with all of them. But that year in particular, they left for when they went home to England, we went to the airports with them and saw them off. And it was like a family. It was just, it was unbelievable. It was really, and it was, and those guys were Jim Fry and Andy Proven. These guys are players, man. I'd never been around players like them, So it was a blast. We played our asses off of them, and there were some American guys. You see, I think that was the right combination, even back then. And somebody has told me, I'm rambling now a little bit, but somebody has told me that there was an American game, professional soccer game, with the most Americans on the field. And it was the Philadelphia Adams, our first game against St. Louis. St. Louis, all Americans. I think I'm pretty sure they were all American. And Philadelphia Adams, our team, I think there was like 6 of us Americans on the field. And I've read something someplace where that was the most Americans on a field in a professional and maybe an NASL game. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. And it's just an NASL game, most Americans. And, I mean, that Adams team is the way I thought that makes sense. There's these 4 or 5 English guys, Scottish, whatever, and there's these 5, 6 American guys fitting in, and let's play. Okay, we're not ready for 11 Americans on the field. We're not good enough to have teams like that. But I really thought that was like a perfect combination, you know, of Americans and English players and putting out a pretty good product, you know.
How did you adjust and/or what were your feelings about and the actual play across the league, aside from the sort of games against St. Louis in particular? I mean, the surfaces and the in many cases cavernous stadiums. Philly obviously drew relatively well, surprisingly, in that first season, but it wasn't sort of major league status per se, right? It was still kind of a sell job, right, to kind of get fans in the stands and all that kind of stuff, right? So quality of play and experience that you sort of went through.
I see where you're going with that, like sell job to the people and all that, but all we're thinking about is we train today, we have a game tomorrow. We go there, it's Rochester, whatever, you're some junk stadium, I don't care. The field's not great, I don't care. I know I'm going out there to play against Warren Archibald that day, or George Siega from York that day, or I don't know, just the players. And to me, it was the greatest thing in the world. I didn't think anything about it not being a professional league. I didn't think anything about, you're not at the levels of the NFL and NBA and baseball. You know you're not there. So that's like stupid to even think that you're comparing it to that. But for soccer in this country, that was the highest level. So, I just remember being so excited and thrilled with every game. And I mean, the surfaces you mentioned, okay, yeah, they were terrible. That stadium was like a parking lot. And, so okay, so what? You're playing though. All that mattered to me was I'm out there playing. I got these guys around me. And the last 3 days we were running doggies and busting our ass at KFK Stadium across the back. And now we have a game. It was always nice to have a game because you're not training now. The game is like a reward of all the work you did all week long. I remember thinking that way and feeling that way. Games are rewards.
Yeah, and you're getting paid for it, right? Which is the whole dream, right?
Yeah, I got paid $88 a week for that week, and I could have cared less about that contract. I was never the best businessman in the game, but I mean, I'm playing, and we're making $400 a month. That's great. I love it. I'm not sitting around thinking that oh my God, look at how little we're getting paid. I would have paid them to play. Honestly, that's how I felt.
But you're also distinguishing yourself too, because that passion is clear, and you're training, and you're obviously improving, and with all the professional talent and the environment that you're around. You're rumbling around some all-star teams, designations over those years, and so maybe a little bit of the sort of the segue into the Cosmos, but by way of a little team in Ireland called Dundalk, right? That
yeah.
I heard you talk with the News Talk guys in Dublin a few months ago. Maybe
did you really? You heard that?
Yeah, regale us a little bit about sort of that sort of loan spell, how that came about, and would you say that was instrumental or just part of your learning curve to get to what ultimately was the next step with the New York Cosmos?
Well, I think it was huge in certain ways. Let me say that Dave DiRico I went there with. Now, Dave DiRico was a strong Kearney, New Jersey player, the Herman Trophy winner, played out in Seattle. Hard player. His assistant coach out there was Irish. The guy wants Dave to come back and play with him for this team in Ireland. Dave calls me and says, "Hey, I got a chance. I think I'm going to Ireland." I said, "Dave, you got to get me there. You got to bring me with you. Tell this guy, I'm over here and I want to go with you." So it was really his assistant coach in Seattle that went there, and the guy said, "Oh, he wants to. Okay, all right, bring him along." So we go to Ireland together, me and Dave, and now it's I'm in a different country for the first time, and Dundalk is at that time in 74, Dundalk was called a running town because it was right on the border of North and South Ireland. And the town just above it, the first town in Northern Ireland, was Newry, and it was shot out, boarded up. You didn't even go in there. It was difficult times in Ireland then. And I mean, we trained hard in Ireland. It was, again, training every day. And we'd go out in the afternoons, and me and Dave would work out and do something. And, we were there on our own. I had one of the guys on the team, supported the team, owned the gas station. I got a job pumping gas at nights from like 6 to 10, making $1 an hour. So I had because we were paid honestly, we were paid $5 a week to play. And we went there on the reserve team. We played 1 or 2 games on the reserve team. Bang, we both went up to the first team, took 2 guys' spots, and played on the first team the rest of that until the holidays, until Christmas. So it was sitting out. I had an opportunity to play year-round soccer. That's like a dream come true again, because I don't have a long off season. I'm not sitting back in Trenton doing what? In an off season, doing nothing.
And were the Adams okay with this, or were they encouraging of this, or this is completely independent of the off season?
I don't even think I don't know. I just went. I mean, they don't have anything until next April. What's the problem? I guess I was considered on loan. Loan from what? Loan from a nothing contract that was monthly only for that summer anyway. So I don't remember any big deal at all about them having any input in that. I mean, I would think the coach would be like, you got a chance to go play, go and become a better player for us next April. You know what I mean? That's how I looked at it. I'm going to go over there and get stronger and better. And it really was hard training. It was the comforts for it. It was good for me mentally because, hey, you're nobody over here. I want to hear one thing every game. You lost that tackle to an American, to a Yank. He's a Yank kind of here. I would hear it because, I guess they found out who we were or whatever. No big deal. But, soccer was so bad here. Why would any European team bring over American players? Because America sucks so bad in soccer. What are these 2 guys doing here? So they just thought it was a little experiment. Let them train with the reserve team. We're not paying them any money. Who gives a shit? They get to pay their own housing. And let them come over here and play a little. And it turned out to be that I learned that, it's funny, Drico went into that locker room after the little first couple days and things when, it was like people coming up and shaking their hand, nice to have you here. They're like, well, what are you doing here? Kind of. No big deal. I don't care. We're playing. He says to them in the locker room, goes, if any of you motherfuckers think I'm here to learn something from you and that I suck, I played soccer all my life just like you did. And we'll store it out on the field or we'll store it out in the parking lot. It's exactly what he says to this room of guys that I don't know who these guys are, And I'm like sitting there going, Dave, Jesus Christ, man, sit down, will you? So, but that's how that experience started out there. And it was great for me. It was really strong for me mentally to be a stronger person. Physically, the game was very physical, but I didn't need too help in that area. But just mental part of it, just dealing with situations really prepared me for being able to get into different challenges in my life. I think that you have to be able to hang in there a little bit with, So that's really what Ireland meant to me. I came home, I was so fit, and I had the best year of my life when I came home. Well, I don't know. Up to that point, the best year. In 75, I came in, I was fit all year long. I was strong and fit from playing. I mean, that's what you want. I don't want an off season.
Yeah, and you were the first U.S. native in the NASL to win first team All-Star honors. So clearly, you gained a lot from the experience. Let me ask you this: as you came back, did you feel that you had improved as a player? And did you also know that the Adams were basically going to go through an ownership change during that season or just after that season, or were you unaware?
No, I wasn't aware of that at all. I mean, it was our 3rd year there. I didn't know. I know that we didn't repeat our championship season. Okay. Other teams in the league, we tried to stay. And I remember Al Miller saying this, and we tried to hold on to what we had in 73, and other teams were getting better, and we kind of tried to hang on, and we didn't. We ended up having an okay year in 74. I don't remember our records. I don't remember stuff like that. But I don't remember that being the last year for the Philly franchise at all. You don't know stuff like that when you're a player. That's ownership stuff. I don't hear anything. Nobody was talking about it. We were just playing. And, but I definitely felt coming back I was a stronger player. And, I mean, if you play something year-round, you're going to get better. Constantly. If you don't get injured, you're going to continue to get better and stronger. I don't want a week off. You know what I mean? I want to play. And I don't like having an off season. I hated going back to even college stuff and having to do the preseason trainings. I hated it. I don't want to be out of shape. If you stay in shape, you never have to fight hard. You never have to hurt for the game that much. You're just you're maintaining a high level of fitness. Was like, a gift to me that I was able to do that. And that's what Ireland gave me. It was a place to play. I remember doing the same thing with Philly when I played. Was it the winter before that or the winter after that with the Fever indoors? I went outdoors, indoors, outdoors, with the NASL, then the MISL indoor team, and then outdoors again. I mean, that's like, to somebody like me, that was like exactly what I wanted, What am I going to do for 3 months in Trenton? Seriously, what am I going to do come home in Trenton?
I get that. So let me ask you this just generally then. I mean, I wonder this at players these days too. How do you prevent from overexposure, possibly for injury or wearing your body down or getting rest, when you're kind of pursuing, the candle at both ends, so to speak, year round?
I don't know. I guess you got to be a little lucky. And I don't know. I don't see this side of wearing your body down. I see this side of getting stronger. I don't see it as breaking down and, I got to back off now a little bit. I mean, you get your rest. You have days off like anything else, and your body recovers. I'm 23, 4 or 5 years old. I mean, what's the problem? And you can't stay away from certain injuries. I understand that, and every sport has certain injury possibilities. But, if you avoid them, which I did, and you're fit. I don't. Yeah, and the game didn't get stale to me because it's so new. We weren't the first ones, but the first professional league, and the first group of Americans playing, that you're so thrilled and psyched about it, that you're on such a high all the time about the opportunity you have, that how could you ever get stale? Every training session, every game you go to me was, this isn't like another day at work where I'm a little bit bored today. I don't remember that at all. I remember going out like guns blazing, let's go. I remember feeling that way. And fortunate enough to stay injury-free for a while there until I had a knee operation in New York one time. But, staying relatively free from doing it. But DeRico left me in December, right, on that Irish trip. He came home. He just had enough. The team had maybe had enough with him because he was pretty aggressive. I kind of like lay in the weeds, just do my job. And he was a little bit, he'd go at them a little bit. He came back, and I stayed there in this apartment, pumping that gas at nights and working, and that was more challenging than anything. And, years later, I went to Brazil with Santiago Formosa, and the same situation. He left me at Christmas, and I stayed there again those next 3 months. And both times I was weighing the possibility of, all right, I'll go home in Santiago, I'll go home in Dorico. But what are we going to do at home, Dave? But they just both had enough of it, and I did not stop. I stayed there. And both times, the second half of those years by myself weren't quite as, probably more learning on my own and more developing certain different kinds of things, but not at all as enjoyable without somebody there with me. You know what I mean?
Very interesting. So, all right. Well, then it's also unwittingly at this point, right, in your career, really good preparation for what was to come next. So let's tee this one up. Give us a little bit of a ramp up here as to how the New York Cosmos situation comes about from the Atoms, which in some of our previous conversations, the Atoms basically were sold, and there was Mexican ownership, and seems like there was an unloading of talent under new ownership. So how does Cosmos come onto your radar?
Yeah, I had just gotten word somehow, I don't remember exactly, that me and Riggs had been traded. And somehow or other, we heard a figure of something like $75,000 each. And I remember thinking, because we were best friends, me and Riggs, so we were together when we heard that news. We got together, and I remember talking to him. It's like, damn, man, they paid us a total of like $12,000 for 3 years. They sold us for that much money. To me, it was like, oh my God, that's unbelievable. That we both got traded. I thought he was worth a lot more than I was, but that's how it came down to both of us. So I think it was 75 each, whatever. But we're going to New York. We get out of the train and we're going to Warner Communications. I don't know where we're going. Get out of off a train, and we walked over to where we're supposed to be, by me and him, and we found our way up to this floor and walked in, and there's Pelé and Steve Ross and Gordon Bradley, and there's our new team. I walked in like, okay, I didn't know anything about the New York Cosmos other than playing against them, you know, and Pelé was there. I mean, are you serious? There's Pelé at our signing, whatever you want to call it, announcement of a trades, you know. I'm thinking, so what? We got to trade to, I mean, not to me. To me, it was, but I'm thinking like in the soccer world of things, okay, who cares? A couple of American guys get traded from Philly to New York. What's the big deal, you know? But here it was, Pelé was there.
So you literally had no idea that you were basically going to be shipped off to another team? I mean, you didn't have any inkling? No.
Zero. I didn't know what was going on with management. You're talking about an off season now. Okay, the team's done, and you're done. You don't stay in Philly. What are you doing there if you don't train every day? You go home. And you go home and you try to work out on your own, and you're not around anybody now because all the other players go back to the countries they're from, and Riggs goes back to, I think he actually did get his teaching degree. He goes back to teaching, I don't know, whatever, down in Philly, you know, and you're just home, and you have no cell phones. There's no computers. You're just home, you know, and you're not happy. I'm back at my parents' house, you know. You want to get back doing something, you know, and then you get a phone call. The phone rings, and you answer it. And your life changes with a phone call, and you're like, oh, damn, I got to call Riggs. Hey, Riggs, we just got traded, Riggs. Oh, damn, Pelé's on that team. We're going to get to meet him. You know what I mean? That kind of conversation, as silly, little boyish as that sound, that's pretty much the way things were back then.
All right, time for me to catch my breath, get a cool, tasty beverage, and remind you, while we do so, that our friends at Audible are here to remind you that you can get a free audiobook download of your choice from over 180,000 titles. If you go to audibletrial.com/goodseats and use that link, of course, to try for yourself a free audiobook on us, gratis, if you will. And you will love the idea of audiobooks. It's an awesome way to kill time and occupy and stimulate your mind, perhaps when your eyes are busy doing something else. And of course, there are plenty of interesting books to be found, especially in the world of sports and sports history. And I think our audience might enjoy a few of these, of course, including the seminal work by baseball legend Jim Bouton. It's called Ball 4. It is not only written, but it's also narrated by him. You could use your free credit for that book. And of course, as you know, Ball 4 centers around the 1969 one-year wonder that is the Seattle Pilots of Major League Baseball, but obviously the background for a whole lot of other observations about the sport of baseball. And it remains to this day perhaps one of the most celebrated writings about the sport of baseball in this country. Of course, you can also, if you're not a big baseball fan, you can go into the world of soccer with the autobiography called My Turn by Johan Cruyff, the late Johan Cruyff, perhaps one of the world's best ever soccer players. He of Dutch heritage, of course. Plenty of great legendary years at club play as well as national team play for the Dutch team, as well as, for our audience, maybe a little bit of interest, his journeys in the North American Soccer League in the late 70s and early 80s with the Washington Diplomats and the Los Angeles Aztecs. And of course, if you're into football, there's probably no better book, especially if you find yourself really interested in the sort of deep and rich history of the NFL, with the book called NFL Football, A History of America's New National Pastime. It is written by Richard Crepeau and narrated by Marlon May. That, too, is an audiobook that you could choose from over, like I said, 180,000 titles. There's got to be something in there that's going to be of interest to you. And by all means, give it a try. And we appreciate your doing so at audibletrial.com/goodseats. And again, you're going to get your free audiobook download. You can cancel at any time. And again, even if you cancel it, you can keep that book as long as your device exists. So again, we appreciate it. Give it a try. audibletrial.com/goodseats. And now back to our conversation. So did you ever find out how you and Bob Rigby hit the Cosmos radar? Like where and how did you sort of distinguish yourselves enough where the brass at Warner Communications and the Cosmos organization felt that you guys were worth pursuing and bringing into the team with this new international superstar at the helm.
Well, I don't know how that came about at all. I believe at the time they knew Rigby. I think Riggs had gone on tour with them, didn't he? Like the spring or something before that, or I don't know now. I'm just trying to think. And Pelé loved him. So I would like to think that, and this is probably a bad rumor, that they were starting to need a couple of American players on the field, and the Cosmos went out to get a couple. Now, that's not fair to the Americans that were there, because I knew them, and they were good players. Why they got us? It wasn't because we were, the only two Americans that could be on their field. There was other players. But I don't know. I know that Pelé loved Rigby and wanted him, and so they came out and maybe they got a deal for both of us, and whether they thought that I was going to be a player. I know that Riggs walked on that field, and that was his job. And I had to, I was there, and I had to fight for my time and my space, and that's, I don't remember anything about any conversation about where I was on their radar at all. I don't know about that. I'm just glad I was.
But also, don't be too modest, right? I mean, obviously, you're an all-star player caliber, right? Rigby's obviously an all-star caliber player. I think Rigby had been in one of the superstars on ABC at that time, along with Kyle Rote Jr.
Okay.
And I also think too that this is around, and I'm not an historian. I just play one on the podcast. The institution of, or the beginnings of, the NASL mandating the sort of 3 Americans or North Americans on the field during the game at all times and stuff. So there's probably a confluence there of not only your standout play generally, but also the fact that you are Americans, and then the league is recognizing that Americans or North Americans have to be on the field, and this tension that's lasted through, I don't know, the rest of soccer history in this country, right? Is how do you get the American players more integrated into the sport, into the game? Mainstream.
Yeah, I think it was. I remember a couple of games where it was you had to have 2 Americans on the field, and I remember the Cosmos announcing their lineup: Bob Rigby, Warner Roth, Bob Smith, and then the rest of the team. And I was running out there with them and sort of saying, "Damn, 2 of us have to be here. One of us really does deserve to be here. I wonder which one that is," because we had 3, and you had to have 2. You know what I mean? So, I never felt like it was like I didn't deserve to be there. We have to have 2, so I'll kick Smith and Rigby out there. I didn't feel that way at all. I felt like we deserved to be out there. I do feel that way. And you said, don't be so humble. I'm not being humble. I know what my value was to every team I played for, and I had a value. And Pelé used to always he'd always say, like, how important all the players were on a team. And he was such a team player that way. It was awesome. He never made you feel like he's a star. I know we have a right back there from New Jersey, but it was always it takes 11 of us to win this game. And I always thought, like, well, if they don't score, we can't lose. So my job was defending, and I took it very seriously. And I tried to be as good a defender, as I could. And I had to play against some big people. And I'll tell you the difference that I believe helped me a lot was I really could care less who I was playing against. And it was a big name player every week, kind of, let's say, but I just remember, like, all right, let's go. This isn't going to be the easiest day he's going to have in my country. It's going to be a difficult day for him. And I never felt intimidated. It's George Best, Johan Cruyff, and Ronnie Marsh, and I loved it. I loved those guys. It was players for me having the opportunity to play against them and mark them was an honor. But I was not sitting out there like little kid looking up to these idols and being nervous. I wasn't nervous, So I think that had a lot to do with me having a little bit of success playing. Was that, and that's what comes from that Ireland stuff, and it comes from just not it just comes from being a rat in a country where you're playing a game that's nobody's standing up and cheering about anybody playing soccer that time. So you weren't like. There was no ego issues going on with American soccer players. There was no room for that, and there was no right to feel that way. I remember going out there thinking, all right, what is it today? Let's go. And loving every minute of it.
Yeah, give me a sense of. So you played for the Cosmos for 3 seasons, and if you had to take any slice of time in the Cosmos arc of their history, you were literally in the probably the most dramatic 2 to 3 years of that franchise, right? So maybe give us a sense of, 76 through 78. I mean, you could not, and obviously we saw the documentary about 10 years ago, and you and Shep in the back of the limo with some very interesting anecdotes. I mean, what a rocket ship, right? I mean, describe that, because here you've been describing a career, right, that has kind of like it's almost giddy the way you describe it, right? In sort of like, you go from one level to another level, and I can't believe I'm going to this level. And now you're not only on this another level, you're going into the stratosphere with a bunch of other things going on, right? In American sports, right? It was a phenomenon. The international soccer community and in the first, if you will, kind of super club. It was a phenomenon in the New York City metropolitan area. It was like it was the place to be and to go. What was that like? I mean, and relatively, I don't know, it was certainly a different level, but, describe that rocket ship ride, because that had to be insane.
Well, let's keep couple things in mind here now. Train every day, be prepared, and games look forward to. That didn't change. That the concept of the game and what I'm all about is, now all the other stuff is like just surreal. Every day I walk into that locker room, I see Pelé. Not one time did I think like, oh, there's Pelé. And I played with him 2 years. I played through 79, half of 79 as well, that you didn't mention, but I'll just throw that in there. But never did I walk into that locker room. But also never did I think like, I was so proud to be in a locker room with him. And next to me is Bogušević from Yugoslavia. Are you kidding me? He's unbelievable. But I never felt like, I didn't belong. I mean, I always felt like a teammate. I love the guys. I'll fight for them. But I really never got comfortable with Pelé being in the locker room. It was never like, he's a teammate. It was always like in awe of him, like almost every day. Because you play with him for 2 years. It never gets to the point where, it's Pelé. I always had that like idol feeling of him being around, because he was that special person in sports and as a human being, So, but I mean, the whole circus of it was just like, it was just a ride. Like you get on this car that's moving fast, and it just takes off, and you're going, and it's just stuff's flying by, and you're involved in it, and it's hard to pick a day and remember what a day would be like normally, when it was kind of like a blur. Every place you go, it's our biggest game of the year. The airport's crazy. Pelé is there. And, I knew then that it was like a really special, certainly very special team. But I tried to stay focused on what I was doing, you know what I mean? And all that opportunity that I have still to play against and with these great players, I have to stay focused on my job and what I'm doing and get there and work harder and get better and care more, and just constantly trying to gain respect. I think that's the biggest thing that American players dealt with and fought for, that I can remember in all the locker rooms, and all of them being filled with foreign players, and seeing the American guys from other teams, is just give me some respect they wanted from their teammates and from the sport in general. Because, it was such a foreign game. We all know that. And Americans were so bad. We all know that too. But, I talked to Dennis Tourt about this one time. He was a Man City player that played the Cosmos. I met him a while later, kind of like 5 or so years ago. He said, Smitty, you guys were so pumped up and so for American players. He goes, you belonged there. There weren't enough of you. And I got that point, He said that to me, and it kind of rang a bell a little bit, but I wanted every team with Americans on. And he felt like, you're not ready. Your country's not ready. They are not ready. You are. And he gave me that. And he never gave me anything, Dennis Tourt. I battled him like we went like animals at each other. And it was great. This big superstar from Man City, and I'm going after him every day. And it was great. And before games, he'd say to me, what American hack am I playing against today? Like, that kind of stuff. And I said, well, hey, it's Dorito today. Maybe you ought to take this game off, Dennis, Maybe you ought to sit down, because these are my national team teammates. And he's just riding the Americans at how bad we are and all that. And I get how they feel that way. But he would say to me, what American hack am I playing against today? So it came down to a lot of respect issues. And, that was always a little bit weird for a lot of the guys. I don't give a rat's ass. I really didn't. I'm out there playing, and I'll get respect in the next 90 minutes. I know that. What you think of me or locker rooms or Americans in general, fine. We're not very good. I get it. But today I'm on this field, and I'm playing against somebody from another country, and I'm going to make their day miserable. That's what I remember feeling more than anything when it comes to the Americanization of the game, and just do my own job. And Dennis Stewart said, there weren't enough of yous. You and Dorico, Ridgey, where's all the others? And I thought we had a lot.
And you're also playing, obviously, on the best team in the league, too, so that's got to be saying something, right? Not only do you belong on the field, but also you are belonging to, what became basically the juggernaut of that league for many years, and distinguishing yourself as such, right? And, that's, again, that's sort of another sort of unique and almost pinch me kind of scenario when you think about your career just a few years earlier, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The changes in it from Adam's first days to then Cosmos and then San Diego, Montreal, and then it's just off and running. And the Cosmos years were pretty wild, though. I remember in the stadium club after the game, we had 77,000 people. And I was looking up at this TV screen. The Mets and the Yankees played both at home the same time we did. The Yankees had 27. The Yankees had 33. The Mets had 27. I looked at that. I did the math, and I said, did we just outdraw the Mets and the Yankees in our home game, and they both played home games as well? And that's like a staggering thought, you know what I mean, for soccer in this country at that time. And that was a true moment. I'm looking at going like, damn, we just outdrew both those teams together. And it's because of play in Beckenbauer, and you're in a city. Now, you're not drawing with people in Tennessee and Alabama and North Dakota. I mean, you're in New York. You could pull it off there. And I don't know what the population of the crowd was. I would have to assume the majority of them were not American-born. Wouldn't you? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I mean,
it's their game.
It's a tension that's been in the game for many years here in this country, right?
Yeah, I mean, people were coming from Trenton that lived in West Windsor and Princeton. People were coming from Trenton. There were the Polish, the Italians, the Irish, and the Scottish. They're the ones that went up to see the games, to see me play.
Well, they also knew quality, right? And this is sort of the thing that continues to linger, as Major League Soccer, rounds the corner for its playoffs this year. And is this sort of that Euro snobbery or the the international sort of expectation of a higher level of play, and it still persists today, whether it's real or imagined. You go to those Cosmos games, right? It was very much a melting pot of fans. I mean, for every American, kid like me, there were, plenty of other foreign languages represented there, but it was entertaining to watch. It was quality. Yeah. And it really didn't matter quality, what ethnicity it was. It was the the proverbial universal language of soccer.
I know, and you had the luxury of watching Carlos Alberto in the back, Franz Beckenbauer in the midfield with Bogey, Pelé up front with Quinalia, Dennis Stewart. I mean, this was like, that has to draw well. It's the best players in the world out there, you know what I mean? And unfortunately, I think the league kind of ended up regretting that kind of a scenario on one franchise because all the other teams, I don't know what they did. They tried to keep up with the Cosmos and get more players, and you still bring in 18 Englishmen. All these franchises started coming out of anywhere. You brought these 18 Englishmen to Nashville, Tennessee, and you want that to work. I don't get that whole theory, how that came about. And there was no Americans on that team, and it's in Nashville, Tennessee.
Well, let's talk about that because I really like to get your opinions about the NASL, especially after you left the Cosmos in, I guess you said in '79, right? So you went to the San Diego Sockers for a season or so, and then back to Philadelphia with the Fury, which is an interesting stop. I want to hear your commentary on, and then ultimately to Le Manique de Montreal for your last outdoor season. Give me a sense of what you thought of the Cosmos while you were inside the beast, shall we say. And did your thoughts change maybe as you were walking out the door of New York when you were on the outside looking in, shall we say, to this Cosmos phenomenon?
Well, I remember being placed on the outside when there was a union strike, and I was on the executive committee of the union, and we had a player strike in 79. And that was my last moment with the Cosmos from that moment on. And it's funny because Steve Ross always said to me, "You're a Cosmo, you always will be." And I loved him. He was the owner of the team. We got along great. And, you know, then that union stuff came along and I got jumped right in front of the line on that one. And I don't know how that worked out. I know a lot of guys I've talked to since then regret every bit of it, but, you know, it was players coming along behind us that had no more of an opportunity to play than a lot of other guys, and I just got involved in that, and there was a player strike, and it was somewhat successful in New York. And then the next day I was gone. I was traded. Steve Ross said, "Where do you want to go?" I said, "I just said San Diego." Do you know he traded me San Diego? I met the team in Chicago. 2 days later, I'm playing in Chicago versus Team San Diego. I don't know. And it was the only team in the league that didn't have a players representative at all the union meetings. And I get traded there. And I'm on the executive committee of the union. And I'm like, and then I found out Vogelsinger was a coach. And he said, "I've always had a reputation of handling the problem players, American players, so I won't have a problem with Smith," that kind of a thing. And we just banged heads immediately in San Diego. And then things started really falling apart for me from that point on. Soccer-wise, I'm trying to hang, but other things are coming into play. I get suspended from that team for quite a while. It just, things started getting a little darker then. And it was just because of, you know, that same American kind of issues and stuff that kind of like I kept it around. It was my decision. I don't blame it on anybody, but, you know, it cost me a little bit. And I'm sorry about that, but that's the way it goes. You can make a stand sometimes, and the chips fall really far and get up and look at yourself in the mirror and say, well, hey, you know, that's what you risked. You risked it, you know. But anyway, so I went back to Eddie Fermani, who always had wanted me back when he was in New York. He got the Philly job, right, with the Fury. So he brought me back to Fury, and I had a job. Otherwise, I was out of work. And then that franchise went to Montreal, the Philly franchise. So fortunately for me, I went to Montreal with it and played up there. You know, and then I remember saying to a coach in the indoor league, I wanted to play in the NASL then, if I could come play with him. He says, can I tell you something? He goes, I couldn't play you. I couldn't sign you for 2 cents. There's just no way I could put you on this team. I'm like, are you nuts? I'm 30 years old. I'm 31 years old. I'm on the U.S. national team. And then it really became apparent. The league was starting to suffer, some franchises dropping, league struggling a little bit, and I was out of work. I was not employable at that time, unfortunately. And I regret that, but you know, that's how it goes.
So talk about the indoor game for a second, because that's obviously also the time, you know, as the NASL was kind of starting its decline in the early 80s, and fairly rapidly, actually, as the 80s sort of rolled on. There was this MISL thing, and you played for a season with the Fever indoors, right? Which is sort of the continuation, as you mentioned earlier, of being able to play year round and stuff. Was there, did you think or potentially hope that would be maybe a place to wind up for a few more seasons, maybe as the outdoor league was sort of wobbly? Because it did seem like the indoor game, especially as the 80s kind of rolled on, you know, it actually became the only major source of professional soccer in this country. Did you see or have any inkling to any of that, or was it just a way to, again, stay in shape for the off season?
That's the way I thought about it initially. Certainly was an off season sport that I get to play year round. I loved it. I never thought of not playing outdoors and only playing indoors. Never. It never even occurred to me. Now, you know, I get to a point you're going to where I'm now out of work, but there still is an MISL. But I just remember, I think the league was as done with me as I was with them, kind of a thing, unfortunately. And it is unfortunate because I wanted to keep playing. But I just think it's like, I don't know, I just feel that I had burnt a couple bridges a little bit there that couldn't be crossed again. And I just think I became unmarketable, actually. And I loved indoors. I thought I played 2 years of the Fever. You said just one. Okay, that's fine. But, I mean, we played that. I loved an indoor game. You know, it was fun. I just, you know, I didn't have opportunities to play it when my outdoor season was done. And I was done in Montreal. I didn't have an opportunity. Now, you don't have an agent. You know, I'm not calling people. No, my phone's not ringing. But how are you contacting people? How are you in touch with that? You know, I was not sure always of how to go about making connections. And somebody must need me as a thing. Where's these teams at? I don't know. What do I do? Drive to these teams to Baltimore and see if I can play for them? I don't know. I never knew exactly how to handle that and how to get in touch with people. It was a different world then, so I wasn't, and I think at that time, I just walked away from the game, and, took the great memories with me and just moved on in life, It was, but I liked the indoors. I did like that, and I would have continued playing. I would have continued playing outdoors if I could have, really, because I stopped at 31, which is, I don't know, not that old.
Well, before we certainly not. So before we sort of wrap up the career thing here, and I want to obviously sort of net out to what ultimately was sort of the ultimate expression of gratitude for what you accomplished, right, with your Hall of Fame induction. Talk to me about the national team. You made an allusion to it, but I think it's important to remember that pretty much during the entire course of your NASL career, you were part of this U.S. national soccer team. Can you give the audience a bit of a sense of sort of what that meant, right? Because it's maybe for better or for worse, not what people think the U.S. national team is today. But it obviously was an important part of the building blocks of soccer in this country. How did that work? How did you get chosen? And what was some of those experiences, both maybe good and not so good?
Well, I mean, the national team was such a safe haven place for all of us to go, because now we're with Americans representing our country, and it was like the biggest thrill. Put Pelé aside and that kind of stuff. The biggest thrill of our lives was to represent your country and hear the national anthem every time you go on a field for that. And it was such a disorganized group of stuff. The national team really was, unfortunately. And it was never a money-making issue, which I could have cared less about. Again, really not a big deal. But it was like you get to see all the guys that you see in locker rooms all over. You see up on opposing teams all over the league. Don't get to play with very many of them because they're all spread out, and you get to play with them on a national team. And they all have the same kinds of things where, it was like they're now with all Americans and not filled with Dennis Stewarts and Ronnie Marshes. And just, you understand the point that I'm trying to make is that it's almost like you take a deep breath and you can relax a little bit. You're playing with all the Americans on your buddies, so proud to be with that group of guys. And no, you can't play Italy. You're going to get beat by Mexico, and you're going to beat Haiti, and you're going to beat Canada here and there. And you're going to win some games and lose to you're going to beat Poland. Very cool. And then you're going to have moments where, you don't belong on the field with these better teams in the world. We know that. We get all that. We've been hearing enough about that all our lives, so that's fine. But you're still representing your country. And if you're the best of 18 in your country in anything, that's very important. I don't care what it is. You're what somebody at least thinks is the top 18 soccer players in the United States. Now, that I want you to wrap your head around, because that to me is like way up there. You know what I mean? Because that's like an unbelievable thing to think of. Wait. The St. Louis, the Portland, Seattle, you have kids in Tampa, a lot of kids in Dallas and L.A., and you took 18 and I'm one of them? I mean, what more do you need, really, in your career, ever in your life, than some honor like that? So that's how I thought about the national team, And doing ups and downs with it, but okay, there's ups and downs with everything. Ups and downs yesterday, and I'll have them tomorrow. That's life. But, you just move on, and there was, some issues with that. And then some of the players weren't happy with the way they get treated, and some guys' shoe contracts weren't honored, and it got a little bit weird with some guys, but to me, it was a thrill of a lifetime. I'm on the U.S. national team. I hear that national anthem before every game we play. I mean, come on. So that was just a tremendous thrill playing on the national team. I got to keep playing.
So you're obviously well qualified to answer sort of this next question as we sort of round home here on this chat. And this has been great. This has been absolutely fantastic. So I'm really curious, and obviously, you've stayed involved with the sport past your playing career as well. Give me a sense of, given all of your playing career and your involvement in the game basically over your lifetime, how would you generally describe sort of the state of professional soccer in this country I guess both at a league level, right, with Major League Soccer and its occasional remembrances of the NASL, or mostly usually not, as well as the national team situation on the world stage. It's come a long way, I guess, in both cases, right, since you were a player. But in some respects, there's also kind of quite a bit still yet to go, no?
Yes. I mean, now these players today are, I think they're just so good. They really are so much more advanced than every generation. Just gets so much better. We are still not a soccer culture at all, by any means. We're still a struggling sport in this country, in my opinion. But the level that we have to play, and the MLS, and I was just talking to a guy the other night that came into my indoor facility, and he wanted to know what the Tottenham game was going on. You know, Tottenham played yesterday. He was trying to get it on his thing, and he was like, yeah, well, you know, I watched that. I can't watch MLS. Okay, Scottish guy, I get it. You're here. We still suck. I'm not watching the MLS. I want to talk. Okay, I got it, you know. And that's still where the MLS is, and it's still where U.S. soccer is, you know. And we end up losing a game to get into the World Cup, an embarrassment to the country. I'm looking at a bunch of millionaire Americans out there playing, and I love our national team, and I've always supported those guys and love it. I saw a bunch of guys out there that look to me like they're going through the motions and don't get in the World Cup, one of the biggest games of their lives, and they have a joke of a game. I mean, I didn't like that. It makes me think like the game has gotten someplace with some of the players, and they're all of a sudden real full of themselves. They're making very good money, and they're putting a product on the field. Nobody's dying out there. Some of them going through the motions and letting down this Pulisic guy to go and be on the world stage in a World Cup and some of the biggest moments of their lives in a World Cup, and they come out and it looked just to me like I'm watching some prima donnas out here. Who do these guys think they are? I'm thinking back of the Mark Demlings and Buzzy Demling brothers and guys on the national team that were just like killers out there when they weren't making any money, and they went out there and died for the team. And I'm thinking like they need a little bit of the old school in these guys here. I don't see a lot of fight out there. Those guys aren't dying for the sport, you know. But I don't want to be negative on our national team because I'm obviously a huge supporter of it. I just thought that was a bad loss. And, you know, you expect our American team now to still beat the Brazils and Argentinas and Englands and Italys of the world. And I just don't know. I mean, I'd love us to get to that point in our players, our development programs. I see players coming into my building now, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds that can play anywhere in the world against 12-year-olds. I have to believe that. They're that good. And something just happens. I don't know what happens. We don't have these Liverpool and these Red Bull programs. That's not what Europe has. We're not even close to that yet. You don't have these developmental leagues. You know, where Liverpool brings on guys and they're in their academy all the way up to their 18, 19, 16, and it's just an unbelievable environment to be in. And we just don't have that.
How about Major League Soccer? What do you see that is in terms of a professional league and the U.S. game and helping, hindering, that kind of stuff?
Is that the best league in this country? And are those the best American players on the field? I'm all about it. I love it. Don't sit there and compare it to Chelsea-Arsenal game. You just got off your ass and saw it at 9 o'clock in the morning and come out here and watch Red Bulls play, Atlanta or something. I like the level. I like it. It's our best players, and they're playing. They have great careers. And I think it's very entertaining, you know. It's just that people have so much exposure now to high-level soccer. You know what I mean? You sit down and watch Barcelona play Real Madrid. Okay, that's not the Philadelphia Union. We know that, you know. But the Philadelphia Union's the best team we have in our leagues, in our country, in the Red Bulls. I'm supporting them, and I go to see them play, and I support them, you know. But people, it says you can watch so much high-level soccer. Now it's at any time that it's almost like, well, all right, I'll go see a Red Bulls game, you know, kind of. It's just like that guy that walked in last night saying the same exact thing. This is just, that's 40 years ago. It's 20 years ago. It's 10 years from now. But the guy's going to come in. I'm watching Tottenham play, somebody, I don't watch the Red Bulls. I don't watch MLS. I mean, I don't see that ever changing. Unfortunately, I just don't. It's a cultural thing. And, that's it. That's the way it goes,
But that said, though, I don't want to leave on a downer note here, because I've heard this and I felt this from a lot of the sort of soccer conversations we had so far. I mean, in many respects, right? I think ultimately recognized by your induction into the National Soccer Hall of Fame in, when was it, 2007? A real recognition that that a lot of what, with the embarrassment of riches, I guess, that we enjoy today, whether it's through television coverage of every game on the planet, a professional league that is knocking on the door of, 28 franchises, although danger signal, NASL at 24, but in a league that's been around for over 20. I mean, could you have imagined that in the mid 1970s when you were sort of living your American soccer dream back in the day, that we would even be having these kinds of conversations about a pro league that's been around and the relative popularity of the sport versus where it was 30 years ago, maybe?
I know. I mean, it's had tremendous success, and I think that MLS is growing, and the numbers are good, and the fan support's getting better all the time. Players are coming out better all the time, and soccer's growing just tremendously. It's realistically, I know where we're still at on the world stage in this country, this MLS and the USL leagues they have now. My son plays for this ASL team, that's, kind of like the ASL is almost non-existent, the different leagues. And he's trying to get USL tryouts, and he's playing. And every place I go and I see these USL teams, and there's so many good players, so many. And I still wish that our better players were getting more opportunities to play. I still wish that were the case. I still think that's an issue that I still have with soccer in this country. But there's so many good players out there, and they don't get a look. I don't think they get a fair shot. I still don't. I think there's 500 Central American soccer players out there, and I'll see some Americans. That's fine. I hate going back to that same issue of Americans playing, but it just seems to be still prevalent. And our best players are so good, and there's so many good players out there. I really wish more players had opportunities. And maybe they're just, a step or two behind. They're not quite good enough. Okay. But this country is developing some serious players, some serious soccer players, athletes, strong. I love it. The game is growing, and the MLS is solid as can be. And we've got players coming out that are better, bigger, stronger than ever. And I love it.
All right. Here's your chance to plug. Tell us about your facility and what you're doing in the sport, and how can people find out more about you and the work you're doing and all that kind of stuff. Well,
I have this indoor facility here. I have a Bob Smith soccer school and a Bob Smith Soccer Academy training programs, and we're just having fun. Great bunch of guys I have that are all soccer guys from this Trenton area, and we have a lot of fun. We're trying to instruct kids. We're trying to teach kids to play and care about it, and these guys are passionate guys about it. And it's just a little old tiny place in Robbinsville, New Jersey, where we're having a lot of fun, and we do a lot of summer camps all summer. It's a soccer program that I'm involved with a lot of really good people, and I enjoy it a lot because it's, kids are just opportunities that they're playing, and they're getting better, and I like the training we're giving them, and it's awesome. I've got 4 kids that are just graduated from college. I got 4 college loans to pay off, so I'm not going any place. I got to be working till who knows who. I don't care. I don't see myself retiring anyway. I just have the same work ethic I always had. I want to hang in there and do the best job I can at something, and that's what we're doing now. And I really like it. And again, it's like another team I'm on, because I'm surrounded by 8-10 coaches and 10 referees. We're all soccer guys. We get together. We talk about the game. We have a blast together. We're all just soccer junkies still. It's actually the same way, and I think that's not unusual. All around the country, I think guys that have soccer backgrounds that get together with their teammates and our hometown boys. The soccer community is still very tight. It's still a small community, I think, and it's a thrill to still be involved in the game, and which I am, and I'm making a living doing it now. Like that's what I never imagined happening, making a living at soccer after I get done playing.
Well, it's been a thrill talking to you, and it's really clear that the passion for the game still exudes from your pores, even though I can't see you. We're just talking virtually. But This has been an amazing conversation and a tremendous career. And again, a lot of the reasons we have some of these conversations is to kind of, not sort of just dwell on the past, but frankly, embrace it, right, vigorously, because, not a lot of the stuff that I think a lot of this generation sort of takes for granted, sports generally, but soccer in particular, right, I think, owes a huge debt of gratitude to players and passionate ones at that. Like yourself, right? Who really, made and pioneered. I throw that word out not too lightly, right? You guys were pioneers, and your passion for the game, back at the time when the success of it wasn't necessarily guaranteed. In many respects, is to be not only remembered but celebrated. And I can't thank you enough for making some time, and I look forward to sharing this conversation with our audience. I think they're going to just be enthralled with it. At least I was. Yeah,
well, I appreciate it, Tim. I mean, it's 40 years ago, man. Where did 40 years go? I feel like I just came off a field like a couple of months ago playing Mexico. I just don't get what 40 years ago is. It's amazing, But thanks for bringing up some of them old memories. You know more about what I did than I do. I'm not, I don't keep track of things that I've done in the past, but I never thought it was that difficult to fall in love with something and just want to do it every minute of your life. I didn't think that was difficult. I loved it, But thanks for wanting me to be involved in your show. I really appreciate it. I heard some of your other shows and they were really, really good stuff. I appreciate it.
Man, oh man, that was a great, fun conversation. Thank you so much to Bobby Smith for regaling us with those stories, putting up with our questions, and my little schoolboy geeky fandom. And yes, indeed, it was he and Bob Rigby when they came to my little school in beautiful Ho-Ho-Kus, New Jersey, as a little soccer player, and sort of getting aware of this sort of professional soccer thing and this team called the New York Cosmos and this guy named Pele. And it was his fault, Bobby Smith and Bob Rigby's, that I became a fan of the sport. And I can't thank them enough for doing so, albeit probably unwittingly. Little did they know, right? But thanks to Bobby, and we hope you enjoyed this chat. I hope it was a good way to celebrate the holidays. You can find more about Bob and his soccer stuff at the Bob Smith Soccer Academy. You can find them at bobsmithsoccer.net. That's bobsmithsoccer.net. And the Bob Smith Soccer Academy is just full of programs. There's an indoor facility there. And in beautiful Robbinsville, New Jersey, in the South Jersey area, metropolitan Philadelphia area. Tell him that you heard him on this little show, and I don't know if there's any discount involved, but I'm sure he'll be excited and ecstatic to hear that you sat through a great conversation with him and enjoyed our little memory lane exploration about the Cosmos and then some in the North American Soccer League. Again, that's bobsmithsoccer.net, and we thank Bobby for taking time to chat with us. We hope that he and you out there in listener land are healthier than I am this week as we record this show for sure, and that you're enjoying the holidays. And we look forward to a great 2019. I think that's the new year. And if you're listening to it in the first week of the new year, we belatedly say Happy New Year to you. And we look forward to dropping our first episode of that new year of 2019. Don't forget to change your checks appropriately when you're writing them out. We will drop our next episode for you on January 7th, that Monday. That's a return to our normal publishing schedule. We've taken a week off. We need to nurse our voice back into health, and we hope that you've enjoyed our explorations in 2018, and we look forward to seeing you again with some more great stuff in this 2019. Thank you so much for listening. Happy holidays now or belatedly to you, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon right here on Good Seats Still Available. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.